Ne-am întors cu lucruri interesante, adevăruri interesante despre ce se întâmplă în Orientul Mijlociu, alături de ambasadorul Aviv Shir-On, director general adjunct în Ministerul de Externe israelian. Mr. Ambassador, you mentioned before the break commercials something very interesting, that Hezbollah has 100,000 rocket missiles which are targeting Israel. From where?
Mostly from Iran and from Syria. They are trying to buy all kinds of weapon systems all around the world, and as we know, the market of weapons around the world is a very wide and sophisticated market. You can buy almost everything. You know that one of the biggest dangers for civil aviation are manpads, the individual anti-aircraft missiles that all the countries in the world are trying to control the sales of those weapons, because with this missile you can shoot any individual, any terrorist can shoot down any plane. And that's a big danger, especially in the Middle East. And these are, for example, one issue that is a major worry for the international community. But those rockets were purchased by Hezbollah, also by Hamas,
and with money,
because they know they cannot fight Israel on the conventional battlefields with tanks and artillery. So what they are doing, they are concentrating on missiles and rockets, and they fire them against the civilian population. They don't attack the Israeli army. They attack the Israeli population in Tel Aviv, in Haifa, even in Jerusalem. And this has brought the situation into the Middle East of an asymmetric war, what we call a hybrid war. And they store all those rockets. I'm talking about 100,000 rockets in South Lebanon. They are stored in villages, in civilian villages in South Lebanon. And if a war, God forbid, starts between Israel and Hezbollah, and we would like to attack those missiles, I mean, the missiles, we will have to
fight with the civilians in Lebanon.
To cause casualties within the civilian population, and then the international community will criticize us for doing that. But this is in order to protect the lives of the Israeli civilian population, which is targeted by those rockets.
Mr. Ambassador, now I'm trying to understand who's giving the money to buy, because this is a very simple chain of questions. Okay, they have these 100,000 rockets. Who is selling them? Okay, we understood, and I don't understand why Russia would do that, but I understand that they are also providing.
Now again, I don't think that they provide it directly to Hezbollah.
But to Assad and
But they sell it to Assad, and from Damascus it finds its way to South Lebanon.
Because Assad is an enemy of you, or because Assad wants to make money out of selling them?
First of all, because Assad is an ally of Russia, okay? So they sell, weapon sales around the world are part of the international interest. The Russians are supporting Assad in Syria.
Yes.
We told the Russians, when we realized that they are there and they are in Syria now, that this axis, Tehran, Damascus, South Lebanon, Hezbollah, is an existential threat for Israel, and we'll do whatever we can to weaken this axis. The decisions of what the Russians are doing are being made in Moscow, not in Jerusalem.
Of course.
But we have a line to Moscow, and we told the Russians what we think about it, and the fact that we have good and normal relations with Russia would not prevent us to hit the Russian weapon systems in South Lebanon if we'll see them as a threat, as a danger for Israel. The money
Yes,
for,
yes,
for those weapon sales come from the same elements that want to keep this war alive, be it Iran, be it there are all kinds of efforts, NGOs, that are trying to raise money all around the world among Muslims under the cover of social organizations, you know, money that is raised for social purposes within the Arab and the Muslim world, but this money finds its way to buy weapons and terror equipment, the same as is happening, for example, with the Gaza Strip. You know that we are actually in a state of war with Hamas in Gaza.
Yes.
But the only country that is providing the Gaza Strip with its daily needs and every day is Israel. Every day between 400 and 700 trucks are crossing the line between Israel and the Gaza Strip from Israel into Gaza, containing food, medicines, fuel, and all the equipment that the people in the Gaza Strip need. One thing that we provide the Gaza Strip is cement, okay? Mm-hmm. This cement is being confiscated by Hamas, and they use it in order to build tunnels to attack Israel. So what should we do? Should we stop the supply of cement because it is important for the people in Gaza to be able to build their houses? Or should we stop it because Hamas is using it for building tunnels?
So
these are a dilemma that Israel has that nobody else has.
You provide them with cement, which is used for building tunnels to attack Israel.
Exactly. Exactly that, yes.
Wow.
As welcome to the Middle East.
Yes. Yes, well, our region is still not so crazy to be understood, but we are not far, you know. Still, Mr. Ambassador, a few questions remained. Now, you told us something new, which is very important for people to know. How can these NGOs be active and raise money from Muslims to attack Israel? And the international intelligence services, which are Western intelligence services, to permit that?
First of all, they don't.
Because I'm sure you are informing them.
Yes, we are informing them. And there is nowadays, especially after the terror attacks in Europe, and the terror attacks did not begin last week in Brussels and even not in Paris. There have been terror attacks in Spain, in the United Kingdom. There was an attack on the Israeli Museum in Brussels last year. And the issue of financing terror is a major issue that is being dealt with by governments and intelligence the intelligence community, including cooperating with Israel, but also cooperation between many Western intelligence organizations. And a major effort is being done on controlling and stopping the financing of terror. So
it's less and less.
It's
happening.
It should be.
It should be.
We haven't. Okay. We have not been able to stop it completely, but there are a lot of efforts that are being dedicated exactly for that.
My next question, Mr. Ambassador, is regarding the elections in the States, because it is important who is leading the United States. And for the moment, we have a little bit of a joke, because I cannot call it otherwise, with Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump, I don't know how to call him. It doesn't matter. Mr. Trump. On one side, and on the other side, we have Hillary Clinton and Sanders. And, you know, I cannot stop myself asking you, for Romania and Israel would, in my view, the best, you know, it's a personal opinion, the best one would be Hillary Clinton, because she had, and her husband, a very open policy towards Europe and Israel. She was not focused so much on other issues like Obama. Now, who would be the best candidate that you would support as Israel community, or I don't know, your voters in the United States would vote with more pleasure?
We will support the candidate that would be elected by the American people.
Okay.
You mentioned in your beginning, in the beginning of our program, our interview, the fact that I'm a career diplomat.
Yes.
And if there is one principle that is sacred for career diplomats, is not to interfere with internal affairs of another country or people. And this is why I really am not in a position to give you an answer on that. I can tell you that I know Hillary Clinton personally, because when I was in charge of congressional affairs in Washington, she was a senator. And there were many issues that, you know, the state of Israel has with the United States, with the United States administration, and with the American Congress, which the Senate is part of. So yes. I worked with her and with her people on many issues, and I really know her personally. She knows Israel, she knows the Middle East, because she was the wife of the President of the United States. She was the First Lady. She was a Secretary of State.
Oh, yes, of course.
She was a senator. So she knows the area, she knows Israel, and I think she's a great friend of Israel. But if I look at Donald Trump, that nobody thought he'd be able to reach this far in the campaign, but fact is that he did. His last speech in the AIPAC conference, the AIPAC is the Israeli, the organization that supports Israel in the United States and in Washington, and they had a conference last week. Mr. Donald Trump's speech at the AIPAC conference about Israel and the Middle East was a great speech of an Israeli, of a friend of Israel. So I think many Israelis would support Donald Trump. And I told you that the Israeli government will support the president and will be elected by the American people.
You are like a rabbi now. Everybody's right.
No, it's not that everybody's right, but it's not for us to decide who will be the president of the United States.
Of course it's not, but I cannot stop myself, Mr. Ambassador, to look at Mr. Donald Trump from the geopolitical point of view. His knowledge about foreign policy, it's very, very low. And his approaches even about the Muslim community, which not all of it is bad. I mean, it's are elements towards anything. He is a very simplistic politician, but I understand your position very well. And of course, you have to be equilibrated in the name of your state. Let me ask about the relation with Hillary. Are you still in personal connection with Mrs. Clinton, or how is...
Well, I don't think that our relations are on a personal level, okay. But I know her personally, and if she will become the President of the United States, I'm definitely in a position to pick up the phone, call her, and say, Hillary, congratulations for becoming the President of the United States. Yes.
No, I was not implying, because I'm sure maybe your wife was not very happy to imply that you have a personal relationship. No, the personal relationship in terms of professional.
Yes. I mean, I was not drinking beer with her, okay, but I definitely know her well, close. And she was supporting us in many important issues that were involving Israel within the American Senate and American Congress, and I thank her for that, for what she did then.
Let me ask you, we don't have so many minutes anymore, but I will still ask you a few questions which I find very important. Mr. Ambassador, I mean, of course you're a diplomat, and of course peace is the most important, as you mentioned in the beginning. But do you exclude in any way a war between Israel and Iran? Or let me put it differently, between Iran and Israel, because maybe that's the case more.
I think that since the Iranians also know something about war, they had to fight a war against Saddam Hussein, they are involved in Iraq of today, they are in Yemen, they support Hezbollah, and Hezbollah is, God knows, not a peaceful organization.
Sure.
It's not the Salvation Army, it's a terror organization. I think they know exactly what war means. They know exactly what the capabilities of the State of Israel is. We are a small country, but we are a strong country. And I don't recommend to anybody to test our abilities. We don't underestimate the strength of Iran as a big country, a country with a sophisticated self-military industry.
Yes.
They are developing missiles of high quality, and I don't think that a war will do good not to the Iranians and not to the Israelis. And I think this mutual deterrence is working. I think that in the world of today, even though the Europeans, the Americans don't or maybe hesitate to put boots on the ground, they would not stay indifferent if such a war will break out. And I think that the dangers are so big that that both sides will refrain of doing it. And you know that when this issue was mentioned in Israel a few years ago, there was and there's still big debate about that. But if Israel will feel itself existentially threatened, I'm afraid that a war might be something that can happen definitely in the Middle East. We, the State of Israel, and it doesn't matter who is in power in Israel, will do its utmost in order to prevent any war, not only with Iran, but also with all the others.
Well, your declaration is very clear, in my view. And coming back to the relation with the Palestinians, we have from the UN a recognition of the Palestinian state as an observer. This is not little, it's quite a lot for them to obtain that. At the same time, we have 12 other states recognizing them. Now, what stops you to make peace with the Palestinians and to have the two-state, as you mentioned at the beginning of our talk show, the two-states solution? Because the two-state solution will be the best for you and for them. It's not easy for you to fight with them while they are going and obtaining international support, and the United Nations accepts them as a state, as an observer state. They have missions, diplomatic missions opened in other states in Europe, for example. So it's a little bit bizarre and dangerous. Who and what is stopping you and them to actually make peace and have these two states living on the same territory?
Actually, the idea of two states was born long ago in 1947 by the United Nations. We accepted it then,
yes,
and the Arabs and the Palestinians rejected it then because they did not want to accept a Jewish independence in the Holy Land. This is the root and the source of the conflict, nothing else.
They don't want to accept Israel.
They don't want to accept Israel as an independent Jewish state. Because of religious, historic, and political reasons that we don't have time to get into. Now, we have offered the Palestinians a few times a solution. It was in 1947, it was in 1967, after the Six-Day War of 1967. In Israel, everybody was sure that now that we got control of the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, the Sinai, and the Golan Heights, the Arabs will come to us and will say, okay, you won another war. Okay, this was the third war after 48, 49, 56, the Sinai campaign, and 67. We were sure that they will come and say, okay, give us back our territories, we'll sign peace with you. Instead of that, there was an Arab League conference in Khartoum, Sudan.
Yes.
The famous 3 no's.
Absolutely.
No to recognition of Israel,
Yes.
no to peace, no to negotiations even with Israel. And this position was maintained by the Arab world.
Why are they afraid of you?
Pardon?
Why are they afraid of you, of the Israeli state existing there?
You know what? This is something you have to ask them, because I fought the wars when I was a tank officer on the Golan Heights, but as a diplomat, I had the privilege to take part in many chapters of the peace process.
Oh yes, you are even the spokesman of the...
Right, of the peace talks with Jordan.
Yes.
I was involved in the peace talks with the Palestinians.
True.
I was working with Yossi Beilin, who was the initiator of the Oslo process with Yasser Arafat, and later with Abu Mazen. And you know what? When they were talking about 2 states, they always made it a point that if we agree to an independent Jewish state, this is only one stage in order to reach the ultimate goal, which is the liberation of Palestine. You know that the PLO, okay, these initials stand for Palestine Liberation Organization. It is not the organization for the creation of a Palestinian state. It's the organization to liberate Palestine. Liberate from whom?
From whom, exactly.
From the Israelis.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And when 2 prime ministers of Israel, after the Oslo process, that actually brought much hope for Israel, but apparently with Yasser Arafat it was not possible to reach a genuine peace. The same Yasser Arafat was offered an Israeli withdrawal from the West Bank by 2 prime ministers, Ehud Olmert and Ehud Barak. And the demand was that if we, Israel and the Palestinians, if we sign a peace treaty, and a treaty will solve the problems of Jerusalem, refugees, security, borders, what have you. We will sign a peace treaty comprised of many paragraphs, but we insist on signing another document, a very short one, saying that this peace treaty is the end of all claims. This is the end of the conflict, okay? Which means no party will come and demand from the other party anything else in the future. And Yasser Arafat was not ready to sign it, because this would put an end to the hope of Israel disappearing from the map of the Middle East. Sure. And this is something that he was not able to sell to his people, the Palestinians, and this is exactly the same thing that Abu Mazen is not able to sell to his Palestinian people today. And this prevents the signing of a peace between Israel and the Palestinians. Nothing else.
Mr. Ambassador, you described it with many arguments, very clear. And of course, we will have the chance to ask other Arab ambassadors what is their view. But believe me, it was a very, very interesting discussion, and I'm very proud that you accepted our invitation. I thank your ambassador again. Again, she cannot intervene, so I applaud her activity here in Bucharest, and I'm very happy that you accepted to come.
There's only one sentence I'd like to add at the end of our interview. We have discussed all this time the conflicts and the crisis in the Middle East, but Israel is much more than just the conflict, and anybody who will visit our beautiful country will see that culture, technology, high-tech, developed agriculture, sea and sun are things that you can enjoy in Israel despite all the problems around us, and the Holy Land is always a trip worth. So I invite everybody to visit us in Israel.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Believe me, your ambassador did that last time, and we also had another talk show a few weeks ago where we described also these issues. But because you are an official of your state, I couldn't stop myself of not discussing the daily, let's say, affairs.
Perfectly understandable.
Thank you again, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you again for being here, and we will wait you for any other time to discuss very frank as you did with us now.
Thank you very much.
Vă mulțumesc și noastră, stimați telespectatori, pentru atenție. Vă aștept săptămâna viitoare cu un alt ambasador la fel de interesant. O seară bună!
Emisiune realizată cu sprijinul Camerei de Comerț și Industrie a României.